Well, here's a big story this morning. Marjorie Taylor Greene's former seat representing Northwest Georgia's 14th congressional district remains vacant, and we are now headed for a runoff for that position.
I think that was expected with so many candidates in the race. Right now, Democrat Sean Harris and Republican Clay Fuller finished at the top two in Tuesday's special election. Atlanta News First Niamani Watson is in studio with us with more on the race and the voter turnout in this case, Niamani.
That's right, and it was a pretty good voter turnout for it to be a special election. Over 24,000 ballots cast overall, which just goes to show how much voters care about this race. The race included 17 candidates, 12 Republicans, 3 Democrats, 1 independent, and 1 libertarian. Unofficial results show Republican Clay Fuller, who was endorsed by President Donald Trump, received nearly 35% of the vote. Fuller is a district attorney. Democrat Sean Harris, who is a cattle farmer and retired brigadier general, got 37% of the vote. Election officials say more than 10,000 voters cast ballots in Paulding County on Election Day, with another 14,000 during early voting.
It's important. It's a federal election. It's one of our Congress seats. It's so important that people got out and voted. Everything went perfect. I couldn't have asked for a better election day. Everything went great.
Now, the runoff in April is only to serve the remainder of Marjorie Taylor Greene's term. Voters in the district will return to the polls again in May for the midterm primary and again in November for the general election. Brooks Gavir.
Niamani, thanks so much. When Marjorie Taylor Greene stepped down, it left the Republican Party with a razor-thin majority in the House. That's one of the reasons this race is so important.
Yes, so now House Republicans are coming up with the plan for the midterms. Atlanta News First anchor Rick Folbaum is here in studio this morning with a look at the party's priorities.
Good morning. Well, President Trump has tried to downplay the importance of the term affordability, calling it a hoax made up by Democrats. But Republicans in Congress who are worried about major losses in the upcoming midterms are certainly not treating it that way. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise of Louisiana says the main goal is to mop up 4 years of high inflation during former President Joe Biden's term. Republicans are now planning to highlight their so-called Big Beautiful Bill, specifically no tax on tips or overtime. Another priority of the president, the Save America Act. It would require ID and proof of citizenship to vote, but some worry it would purge thousands off the rolls, including married women who have legally changed their names and people without passports. The president cannot sign anything until it gets through the Senate, where Republican Majority Leader John Thune admits he does not yet have the votes.
That is just a function of math, and there isn't anything I can do about that. I mean, I understand the president's got a passion to see this issue addressed, as we all do.
President Trump also told lawmakers during this week's GOP retreat that he does not know when the war with Iran will end, only saying it will happen soon.